So we're going to begin this morning with a presentation from Victoria Espinel, and this is something that we're really pleased and happy to be offering. As we've talked about constantly at this conference, we are celebrating the 10th anniversary of the Future Music Coalition. And one of the issues that we have spent a lot of time on certainly is the role of copyright in a digital age, and how copyright sort of fits into this sort of crazy evolving digital marketplace, legitimate digital marketplace. And one of the things that I think that we are proudest of as an organization is that we have consistently and I think forcefully promoted the notion of public, open conversation and debate and dialogue. There are a lot of stakeholders who have very strong feelings about copyright. They really run the gamut, from maximalists to people who want to reform, to Creative Commons, to all sorts of ideas and all sorts of notions. And I think one of the things that we've really done a good job of, excuse me, we feel like we've done a good job of, is consistently bringing forward the strongest voices in this discussion to publicly explain their position, to be held accountable to questioning, and to really keep exploring where we go and what we should be doing. So Victoria serves in the Executive Office of the President, and she is the first United States Intellectual Property Enforcement Coordinator. In her role, in her job, she's charged with developing and implementing the administration's overall strategy for enforcement of intellectual property. Prior to her appointment, Ms. Espinel was a professor at George Mason University School of Law, teaching intellectual property and international trade law. While at George Mason, she acted as an advisor on intellectual property issues to the staff of Senate Judiciary Committee, Senate Finance Committee, House Judiciary Committee, and House Ways and Means Committee. In 2009, Ms. Espinel founded Bridging the Innovation Divide, a not-for-profit foundation focused on addressing the innovation divide and empowering all Americans to obtain the full benefit of their creativity and ingenuity. In 2001, Ms. Espinel joined the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative as a Senior Counsel for Intellectual Property Issues. In 2005, she was asked to serve as the first Assistant United States Trade Rep for Intellectual Property and Innovation at the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative, creating the Office of Intellectual Property and Innovation at USTR, and serving as the Chief U.S. Trade Negotiator for Intellectual Property and Innovation. While at USTR, she testified on numerous occasions before the House Judiciary Committee and the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Government Affairs. She holds an LLM from the London School of Economics, a JD from Georgetown University Law School, and a BS in Foreign Service from Georgetown University School of Foreign Service. Yes, we have another Georgetown alum. We dominate this conference. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Victoria Espinel.
Thank you very much for inviting me here today to speak. It is wonderful to be back at Georgetown. As you heard in my intro, I was at the School of Foreign Service in 1989, and I graduated from Georgetown Law School in 1992. We didn't have this beautiful building and many of the buildings that are on the campus now when I was at school here, but I have very happy memories of it nonetheless. I was just curious, are there any students in the room? So my mother is Jean Lord. She's a Dean of Student Affairs here at Georgetown. So I hear a fair amount about the students at Georgetown, and I was just curious why you guys are so much trouble. I can assure you that we were very well behaved when I went to school here. So I'm very happy to be here. I had a new office at the White House, and I'm delighted to have the opportunity to tell you what we've been working on. My job, in a nutshell, is to protect the creativity of our citizens. In other words, to protect what the artists create. A few months ago, President Obama said, "We are going to aggressively protect our intellectual property. Our single greatest asset is the innovation and the ingenuity and the creativity of the American people. It is essential to our prosperity and will only become more so in this century." With that inspiration driving us, on June 22nd, we announced the administration's Joint Strategic Plan on Intellectual Property Enforcement. Our strategy was announced by myself, with Vice President Biden, and we were joined by Attorney General Eric Holder, Secretary Locke, the head of our Department of Commerce, Secretary Napolitano of our Department of Homeland Security, Ambassador Kirk, who is the President's chief trade negotiator, and other senior representatives from our government. We delivered the strategy to Congress that same day. Protection of our innovation and protection of our creativity is an essential part of our plan for economic recovery. And right now, President Obama's #1 priority is getting our economy back on track. Protection of intellectual property will increase exports, it will create jobs. Lack of protection is a threat to our businesses, a threat to our consumers, and it is an issue that unites labor and business, it unites small and large companies, it unites Democrats and Republicans. Our strategy has been very well received, and that is gratifying, but the real value of the strategy, like any strategy, will be in how well we do in implementing it. So we are moving forward quite rapidly to implement the strategy. The United States, at this moment, leads the world in the creation of new creative works. And music is one of our greatest exports, both in economic terms and in the enjoyment that it brings to people around the world. But it is also true that in the last 10 years, the music industry has been undergoing extreme change. The Economist reported last week that 95% of downloads of music are illegal. 95%. That is a staggering statistic by any measure. The internet has been an enormous boon to our culture and to our economy. It drives economic growth by opening new markets. It creates new opportunities for American companies and American artists to reach consumers across the globe. Because of the internet, the world will never be the same. Because of the internet, the world will continue to change, and we should embrace that change. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all of these can be a tremendous asset to artists trying to reach an audience. And I know that part of this conference is to talk about new and emerging business models, and we at the White House are very interested in that. However, we also need to take care to address illegal infringing activity that's taking place online so that the internet can be free and open and free of illegal content and products. I have been quite busy the last 9 months, but I've not been working alone. My office at the White House is bringing together many different parts of the US government that work on intellectual property enforcement. So the Department of Justice, our Homeland Security, the Department of Commerce, our Health and Human Services, Department of State, USTR, and others have worked together to create the strategy that we announced in June and now to implement that strategy. And I've been very impressed by the commitment that all of these agencies have shown to fighting all forms of intellectual property theft. I've also been very impressed by the input we have from the public. While we were developing the strategy, we asked the public to give us ideas, to tell us what they thought we could do better, to give us their recommendations for how we could improve as a government. We asked for input from the public, and we got a lot of it. My office read more than 1,600 public comments that were submitted to us, including very helpful comments from the Future of Music Coalition. And all of those comments are available on the website so that the public can see what we are hearing from them. We heard from America's creators, artists, and unions about illegal copies of books, music, movies, and television programs online. We heard from painters and photographers and graphic artists whose works are stripped of all their identifying features and posted online. We heard from manufacturers and producers of computers and video games about their products being illegally downloaded at staggering rates. We also heard from those that noted that fair use is very important for supporting innovation in industry and that intellectual property enforcement should focus on stopping those that are stealing the work of others, not stopping those that are appropriately building upon the work of others. The meetings that we have and all the great input that we got from the public was very helpful to us in putting together the strategy. And in the end, we committed to 33 specific actions that we would take as a government. I'm not going to discuss all 33, although I'm happy to. It was very important to us that the strategy be comprehensive, that it tried to address the range of issues across many different business sectors. One of the things that we found as we were getting input from the public is how wide the range of business sectors touching almost every part of our economy was in terms of suffering from intellectual property infringement. But I am going to highlight today a few that I think are particularly pertinent to the topic of this conference. First, we are calling on the private sector to do more to reduce piracy online. We believe it is essential that all parts of the internet economy be working together in a voluntary and cooperative way to reduce the flow of illegal content. So we are encouraging right holders, internet service providers, online advertisers, credit card companies, search engines to take action against this illegal activity in a balanced manner that will effectively address repeated acts of infringement while protecting legitimate uses of the internet and protecting principles of free speech and fair process. At the same time, we, as a government, will continue to pursue other solutions to this problem, or additional solutions to this problem, including vigorously investigating and prosecuting criminal activity. And we are working with Congress as they attempt to address or to develop legislative fixes to address this problem. Second, foreign-based websites are a significant problem that we face. Because they are based overseas, they pose a particular set of challenges for our law enforcement. They are also a source of much illegal content, both illegal copyright content and dangerous products that are coming in to our borders that are being bought over foreign-based websites. So we need to address them, and we need to address them in a special way that will involve bringing together our law enforcement, but also our diplomatic and economic agencies, as well as the businesses that are affected by internet piracy. Third, we are ramping up our enforcement efforts. The week after the administration's strategy was launched, the Department of Justice, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District, and the Department of Homeland Security announced something called Operation In Our Sights. As a first step of that operation, law enforcement seized bank accounts and domain names of websites that were offering first-run movies, often within hours of their theatrical release. That nationwide sweep was the first action under Operation In Our Sights, but there are other enforcement activities coming. Fourth, and the last that I'll mention, is that we are undertaking a review of our own domestic laws to see whether or not there are deficiencies in our laws that are hindering our enforcement efforts. And we want to make sure that our laws are as effective as they can be. This review is very important to make sure that our laws can keep pace with technology on the internet and the challenges that we're facing today. I want to emphasize that I've focused on 4 items that I think are particularly relevant to this conference, but we are committed to fighting all forms of infringement, whether it's theft of our trade secrets, patent infringement, all forms of piracy and counterfeiting involving all of our business sectors. We are committed to enforcing our rights overseas and to increasing our exports by ensuring that our creators have a fair chance to sell their products in foreign countries. China is a country of particular concern and the source of pirated digital content, as well as every other kind of counterfeit hard good imaginable. And we will address these and other problems as we move forward with implementation of the strategy. The announcement of our strategy was an important first step in our fight to protect the innovation and creativity of our citizens. It was, however, just the beginning, and we will continue to work with the public, with our stakeholders, with Congress, with all the agencies of the federal government to implement the plan and to achieve our goal of protecting American intellectual property rights and making sure that our artists and our creators have a fair chance. Thank you very much.
Hi, thanks for speaking today. Eliza Krigman, the National Journal. To what extent have you been involved in the anti-counterfeiting trade agreement talks, and do you expect those to be a draft to be released this week?
So the job of my office at the White House, USTR is the lead negotiator on ACTA. My job is to make sure that all the agencies, including the ACTA negotiations, are being conducted in a way that is consistent with the administration's priorities. So I am aware of what's going on in the ACTA negotiations. I think we are very hopeful that ACTA will be successfully concluded. I think it is clear that we need a new international standard for enforcement. The only international legal standard for enforcement we have right now is the TRIPS agreement at the WTO, and the enforcement provisions of the TRIPS agreement were concluded in the early 90s. So in other words, before the internet existed as a practical matter, before China was the manufacturing powerhouse that it is today, before global distribution networks were set up, the TRIPS agreement was not negotiated with the problems that we're facing today in mind, and therefore it is not adequate to address them. So I think it is clear that we need a new international standard for enforcement, and we are very hopeful that ACTA will be successfully concluded, and that it will serve as that baseline for international standards, and that one day all countries of the world will sign up to the ACTA standards. They made a lot of progress in Tokyo, as you've probably heard, and I think it is our expectation that there will be a text released this week. Did that answer your question? Okay. Okay.
Hi, Paul Shatskin, AKA Driver49, for those of you following on Twitter. Does the administration have a position on net neutrality?
So net neutrality is under the auspices of the FCC, as I'm sure you're aware. So I would defer to Chairman Genikowski on that. I will say, in terms of what I am focused on, there is a very small area of what I do that intersects with a very small area of net neutrality. I think in terms of, it is sometimes asserted that there's sort of an inherent conflict between protecting intellectual property and net neutrality. I do not think that is the case. I think it is very possible, as I said in my remarks and as I've said before, to move forward with net neutrality, to have a free and open internet, which is very important to the administration, at the same time to find a way to not have an internet that is polluted by illegal content.
Is this Ms. Lowe? Yeah. Thanks for coming. Appreciate you addressing this audience.
Happy to.
You said yourself 95% of content that is downloaded from the net is illegal, which doesn't strike me as that far off base. Those are the numbers we've heard over the last 10 years. That seems to indicate that there are a lot of quote-unquote criminals out there in the general population of the United States at the moment. How are you going to reconcile the fact that this seems to be normal behavior in a lot of American households with the strategy that you've just outlined to go, basically protect the interests of copyright holders and intellectual property owners dating back to the 20th century? I think it seems to me like there's a real disconnect between the way people behave under present digital, the digital environment we're working on, and the strategy that you've outlined.
So do you mind me asking where you're from, just out of curiosity?
I'm a reporter with the Chicago Tribune.
Okay, great. Oh, I'm going to be in Chicago. I'm going to be in Chicago later this week. Actually doing a town hall at the University of Chicago, and we'll have the privilege of holding it in the president's old classroom where he taught. Anyway, so welcome to DC. First of all, I guess I would say I don't see there being an inherent conflict. First of all, I am of the view that the majority of consumers don't want to engage in illegal conduct, and that if there were, I'm of the view that the majority of consumers don't wish to engage in illegal content. I also think there are some interesting data points about exactly which parts of our population, which particular demographics are engaging in illegal conduct. On the other hand, I think it is true, and this seems to be particularly true for the music industry, that the online environment has become, shall we say, a very difficult one for them to operate in. And I think in terms of the administration's focus, we are very, very concerned about websites that are distributing illegal content for profit, basically businesses that are being set up, some of which are set up in a way to deliberately mimic, or at least to appear to consumers as if they are legitimate content. So they engage in things like subscription fees, even though they're only providing access to illegal copies, or they have advertisers, perhaps unwittingly, from big companies that appear to legitimate the websites that they have. That is a real concern to us, and I think trying to make sure that those types of websites, sort of websites that are essentially setting up a business model of selling illegal content, aren't allowed to operate anymore, is a big focus for us. Okay, are we good? All right, great. Thank you very much.